Happy Wisdom Wednesday, everybody, and this week I have a very controversial book for you. It's going to upset quite a lot of people, so if you are easily upset and offended, if you have thin skin, what I recommend is go ahead and just stop the video right now and skip on. Enjoy the rest of your day. You don't have to see this. Just give it a moment. So now that we have the people who are actually out for truth and knowledge and wisdom, let's get into this book. So it's The 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. I've had this for many years now, and I always find time to review it. If you have a great book, it's always worth rereading great books at least once a year. So The 48 Laws of Power, why is this controversial? Well, it pretty much distills 3,000 years of history, of stories, of great leaders, dictators, mass manipulators, cunning con artists, all into one book, and it explicitly distills it down to 48 laws of power. This book is so powerful, it's so controversial, it's actually banned in some prisons. If you look up on Google, there's a few prisons in Utah that have come out and stated why they banned this book, because the prisoners, once they read it, they get too many ideas. So what's the 48 laws of power about? Well, exactly as it states, the laws of power of the world. Now, I encourage you to buy this book because it's not important for you to like this book. You don't have to like the things you read. You have to learn them, though. And most importantly is that I want you to think about getting over yourself. See, when we read history, say this book, which pretty much dismantled all of communist Russia and put an end to communism, the Gulag Archipelago, it talks about the atrocities committed during World War I and II in Russia. When we read about Nazis in Auschwitz, or even really malicious executives, of certain industries, we say to ourselves, oh, I could never imagine doing that myself. But here's the thing, all the people that I just mentioned right now, they're all human beings, and guess what? You're a human being too. So it is within you that you have this capacity to commit malicious acts, to use certain techniques and approaches to gain power. Because the mistake is that the fool looks at man and says, I see only gods and monsters, but we forget that day and night are still one. And why I want you to buy this book and read it very carefully is this, is that if you do not have the imagination to read history and read it as if you're reading about yourself, if you don't have the imagination to think and go to a dark place and say, what would it take for me to do X or Y or Z? I promise you that someone will come along who has that imagination to go to those kind of places, and they'll win. They'll take advantage of you. They'll take advantage of your company, of your employees, of your team, of your family, and they will win. So buy this book and learn more about the laws of power. So let's go through one of those laws of power. And at the end of this video, I'm going to give you a very specific lesson to, or exercise to do when you go through this book, which is going to be very painful, but I promise you, you'll thank me for it. So one of the laws, which is an interesting one for entrepreneurs, is get others to do the work for you, but always take credit. Now, a lot of people, they say, when they see that, they say, Omar, that's very malicious. Let me give you an example of someone who did not follow this law, or at least did not pay attention to it. Nikola Tesla. Nikola Tesla was a fantastic inventor, a brilliant mind and scientist, ambitious. When he met Thomas Edison, though, Thomas Edison knew how to play by the rules of power. Tesla, on the other hand, really believed in facts and science, and that stood above all else. It doesn't stand above politics, though, unfortunately. And over again, Nikola Tesla was taken advantage of by Thomas Edison, I think Westingate, other people along his path, and he pretty much ended up being impoverished by the end of his life. You don't want to end up like a Nikola Tesla. And I'm going to read to you just a couple of passages from this chapter, just to illuminate a few points. So this lesson is really twofold. First, the credit of an invention or creation is as important, if not more important, than the invention itself. And the second thing is learn to take advantage of other people's work to further your own cause. Time is precious and life is short. If you try to do it all on your own, you run yourself ragged, waste energy, and burn yourself out. That is a great example of how a lot of young, new entrepreneurs function, is that they try and do everything by themselves. Even me as a manager, when I first got started out in my career, I tried to do everything by myself. And really, aside from a law of power, this is also a law of vulnerability, is to recognize the ego in yourself and say, you can't do it all, that you need the help of others. So learn to get the help of learn to get others to do the work while you take the credit and you appear to be godlike in strength and power. If you think it important to do all the work yourself, you will never get far. Find people with the skills and creativity that you lack and either hire them while putting your own name on top of theirs, or find a way to take their work and make it your own. Their creativity thus becomes yours and you seem like a genius to the world. Now, people still have issues with this idea, but let's take this book, for example. Robert Greene didn't invent these stories. He went and found them, right? He compiled them all from various texts in history, and then probably saw a pattern and trend and realized that he can distill it down to 48 laws of power. Does that make him a plagiarist? Does that make this book any less valuable? The answer is no. If anything, this is an incredibly valuable book, right? But had he thought about it that way, this book would have never been published, right? And the world would have been without one more book that could definitely help each individual further their own cause and interests. A couple other things I want to read to you. Learn to use the knowledge of the past and you will look like a genius, even when you're really just a clever borrower. Sometimes when we read these old books, and there's a reason why most of the books that I read, and oftentimes I don't share on LinkedIn, they're very old books. Because when we find these old books, it's as though we're finding treasures from our ancestors. There are people, ancient people, 50, 100, 200, thousands of years ago, who took a lot more time than I did to think about the common problems and causes in life, the way the world works. And I would be a fool to think that I'd be any smarter than them. In fact, every day that I wake up, I try and remind myself that I'm actually a moron. I'm an idiot. I know nothing. And it will be to my best interest to learn from the great mentors and the dead of the past. Now, a couple other things I want to leave you with. You can slog through life, making endless mistakes, wasting time and energy trying to do things from your own experience, or you can use the armies of the past. There's an old saying that says, fools say that they learn by experience. The better thing is for you to profit from experience. There's too much to be known, and life is really short, and life without knowledge is really no life at all. And so it's really to your benefit to get this book, to understand the way the world works, to understand these laws, right? That doesn't mean that you look for ways to be malicious or cynical or manipulative, but you have to understand that this is how the world works. And at the very least, you have to understand that these powers, if they're not being used to your favor, they're going to be used against you. Now, last piece, and this is the lesson I want to leave you guys with. Order this book, but look up the laws of power online. You can find them anywhere. And I want you to look through and identify 3 of the laws that you most often violate yourself. This is a great career development moment for you to do this. Now, here's the caveat. As you go through this, I want you to visualize and really pretend that someone in your life, let's say your old boss or a CEO or your mother or father, someone who knows you very well, uncomfortably well, is sitting right next to you looking through these laws, and they were the ones to point out the 3 laws that you most often violate. I'll give you, just for the sake of it, because this is a close community here on LinkedIn, and I genuinely appreciate the relationships I've built. So one of the laws that I must violate, I'm not going to give you all 3 of mine, but I'll give you one of them, is law number, let's see, 4. Always say less than necessary. When you are trying to impress people with words, the more you say, the more common you appear and the less in control. Even if you are saying something benign, it will seem original if you make it vague, open-ended, and sphinx-like. Powerful people impress and intimidate by saying less. The more you say, the more likely you are saying something foolish. And I absolutely agree with that. The one thing that was a very difficult lesson for me to learn is the value and, of course, respect and vulnerability to oneself when going to meetings at new companies and learning to keep your mouth shut. Not only does this help you learn more and observe, but also keeps you from looking foolish, as tempting as it might be to speak more. So, there's the book of the week, 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene. He actually just published a new book. I'm very excited to go through it. It's called The Laws of Human Nature. I'm going through it, and hopefully I'll be doing a quick review of it maybe in a couple of months or so. It's going to take me some time to get through this. So, happy Wisdom Wednesday. Again, thank you all for tuning in. And if you feel vulnerable yourself, if you want to put your ego aside, drop a comment below and share maybe one of the laws that you most often violate. Happy Wisdom Wednesday, and as always, I'll see you next week.